Hey everyone, welcome to another week of Unscrambled Faith. I'm your host, Megan Clark, and I am so glad that you have taken the time to share some space to listen to me today and hang out with me this week. I actually am just getting back from therapy. If you've been listening to me for a little bit now or watching, if you're catching us on YouTube, you would know that for some time now, typically I choose to record this podcast pretty much within, like, I would say an hour or two ish, usually when I get back from my therapy sessions, depending upon like what kind of day I had in therapy. But, interesting enough, there are times when I have an idea what I'm going to talk about on the podcast, and then there's others where I pivot and I decide to switch it up a little bit. So this week, yeah, I decided to switch it up a little bit. Coming off of my therapy session, shout out to my therapist Rachel. She and I actually got into a little bit of a discussion in this week's or today's session, and I shared a little bit about her with her as far as what's going on with me. So today and this week looks a little bit different for me. Listeners, viewers, maybe you could perhaps relate to this as well. But I'm going through a time right now where I'm not only in the beginning stages of perimenopause, yes, but I am smack in the middle of a very heavy cycle month. And if you are listening and you can relate to this, you know why I took that big sigh, because it's definitely not a fun time. In fact, interesting enough, whenever I do have a cycle that's a little bit heavier than normal, on top of the fact that I am now going through the stages of perimenopause, life looks a little bit different. My days look a little bit different. And, my therapist, as usual, she's like, how's your week going? How's your day? And I told her, I said, I'm going to be very honest with you. I said, I'm very tired right now. I know that my iron levels are low. And I will say that I have taken steps necessary to make sure, typically ahead of time as much as possible, to plan and prepare to make sure that things like that don't necessarily happen. But the fun part about perimenopause is that cycles can be unpredictable. I used to, my cycle used to be about every 25 days, very predictable, especially quite some time ago when I came off of birth control and finally got my cycle back into being just that in a timely manner. But now that I'm going into, not even going into, I'm actually in the midst of perimenopause, it's a little unpredictable. So sometimes it's on time, sometimes it's not. And, interesting enough, in the last year or two, I've done a little bit more research than I had in the past as far as how I can take better care of my body and prepping it for that specific time. And interesting enough, if you have not entered into the realm of perimenopause or menopause, then you are very fortunate because you can do all the planning and you can do all the prep work. And the frustrating part for me is, before I would do the planning and prep work and I would kind of like segue into my cycle, as I was as prepared as I could be. But here's the thing, when it comes to perimenopause, it's not always predicted to happen when you think it's going to happen. So, you do all this prep work and you get ready and then it does not happen. So fortunately this time I think it was only off by, I want to say like 5 or 6 days. So it wasn't as bad as it's been before. But here we are, we're in the smack in the middle of it, and hopefully you can relate to that. So talking about that with my therapist today got my wheels turning, and I shared a little bit about with her as far as how it goes with my cycles and what that looks like for me. And I was like, what better way to share a little bit of insight about how I go about my day. And when we were talking about today and what it looks like for me, I was sharing with her about how I know now to give myself a little bit of grace. So that's kind of like what we're going to dive into today. Before we go ahead and get started, as always, if you're watching from YouTube, I want to share and show off my earrings. If you know, you know. If you're a fan, I am, I would say, a mega fan of this series, but these earrings are pretty incredible. In fact, the person who made them for me, she is ridiculously talented. And when she decided to come out with a book series and did a lot of earrings based upon a lot of different types of books, I absolutely had to have these like as soon as possible. And I figured, what better way, what better day for me to rock them? Plus, I think they look kind of cute with my outfit. But anyway, so today we're going to talk a little bit and dive into slowing down with grace, and giving yourself permission to pause. So when we were talking about, and I was sharing with my therapist today about how my day was going, you know, I told her, I said, one thing that she honestly made my day on was, she was like, you know, I always look forward to seeing whatever you wear to our therapy sessions. And I told her, I said, you know, I really appreciate that. I said, because prior to showing up to therapy, I was not really feeling 100%. And I told her, I said, this morning was definitely a lot heavier a day than it's, like I said, I'm in the middle of it. So if you know, you know. And I told her, I said, you know, when I woke up this morning, I made the decision that I was going to pivot through my day, and my day was going to look a little bit different than it normally would, because my body, I was listening and very in tune with my body. And I know that my body was telling me that today I was getting to not necessarily bring everything to a halt, but slow down a little bit more and kind of just ease into the day. So that looks a little bit different for me than most days. And so I told her that I spent more time this morning fixing breakfast. I had a little bit more of a slower morning. I did a little bit of work, but I did it mostly from the recliner. I had my ice pack handy. I made sure and hydrated more than usual, and I got caught up on my book. I haven't actually read the book that I'm reading right now. I haven't actually, full transparency, I haven't even read a book, which is very unlike me. I think it's been a couple months now. And y'all, whenever you know, if you maybe perhaps have like that, a hobby or something that you like to do in your pastime that brings you a little bit of sense of peace, quiet, serenity, you know, it helps you focus and just kind of center yourself a little bit more. So whatever that looks like for you, that's reading for me. And I tell y'all what, over the last couple months, I've really been able to tell with not only like my sense of self, but I feel like that with my just overall mentality, I've been able to tell the difference over the last couple months from not reading, from not slowing down. And then I got to where I was just kind of almost getting like mentally burned out. One interesting thing that I do want to get a little bit more, dive into a little bit more, is the myth of the constant hustle. So tying into, you know, what I shared with my therapist today, and what I started talking about just now, was I feel like that there's this, and I not even I feel like, I know that there's this unrealistic pressure that I feel like that as women, we put on ourselves to constantly push through, even when our bodies are asking us to slow down. No matter what that looks like for you in your life, no matter what your day-to-day looks like, I feel like that we all equally put so much pressure on ourselves, and I feel like society also puts this unrealistic pressure on ourselves. And then even those in our own household, to where we're supposed to just push through because we're super women. We're super woman, right? Like, we're supposed to push through it. We're supposed to be okay no matter what. We can do it all. We can take on all things. But the truth of the matter is that there gets to a time, I feel like, that where we have to give ourselves not only grace, but know that it's okay to rearrange your day. It's okay to not do as much. I'm not telling you to completely, again, bring your day to a halt, because to me, that's not always realistic, especially if we have people that are counting on us, or if we have jobs outside of the house, or no matter what, you know, whatever other responsibilities we have other than ourselves. And I feel like that even though there's this mentality for sure that we have to push through, I feel like that where it definitely alters, and we have to take it a little bit more serious when it comes to not only our mental health, but our physical and our overall well-being, and readjust our schedules, is not only when we're entering the realm of perimenopause, but menopause too, because I'll tell y'all what, like, I definitely started, sorry y'all, if you're watching YouTube, you're going to be watching me stim a lot. My face is very itchy right now, and I'm not loving it, so sorry to get off topic there, but my face, like I said, is really itchy today, so if you're watching the video, I'm going to apologize, because you're just going to see me, you're just going to have to watch me itch my face a lot during this video, so I am so sorry. But anyways, and so I noticed last year, pretty much towards like maybe the middle of the year, toward maybe the end, almost close to the end of the year, I noticed that there was this shift in not only like my mental state, but just physical. And it got to where I started honestly not feeling like myself. And I almost had this kind of like out of body experience. And I knew, because I had been in therapy for the last couple of years or so, that it didn't have really anything to do with, I know it wasn't depressed. I knew that it wasn't ADHD burnout, because I've addressed that as well through therapy. I know what that feels like. I know what that looks like. Again, I knew that it wasn't my depression that I've struggled with over the years. This was something that I really just couldn't pinpoint and explain in the moment. And it just felt, that's all I can say, is that it just felt very out of body. I didn't feel like myself. I felt like where it was very frustrating was that there wasn't like one thing that I could pinpoint that was making me feel like this. Because for the most part, prior to that, like months before, weeks before, I was good. Like, life was good, business was good. I was in a healthy place in my marriage. Therapy was going great. I was thriving. So it was very upsetting for me to like all of a sudden just kind of like wake up one day and then not feel like myself. Like I said, it was very much like out of body experience, and I didn't like it. It was very upsetting. And since then, things I would say have gone like somewhat better. I feel like honestly it's because I've not only started looking into like more research with perimenopause, but also talking to others, talking to my therapist, and being able, and honestly opening up with some of my friends, and for us to have a little bit more of a leaning on one another and having these honest conversations with one another about like what's going on with ourselves. Because to be in like, for me, speaking on my behalf for like perimenopause, there's so many things that fall underneath like the umbrella of symptoms. And you just feel like, I just feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like that there are things that are happening to me, that symptoms that haven't happened before, unexplained symptoms. And to me, it's like, if there's no explanation for it, I mean, and here's the thing too, by the way, I recently went to a family doctor, and we did like a full workup. Like we did, which funny enough, like again, going back to the fact that like I knew what was going on with me, but the sad fact is that as of right now, there's not a whole lot of hard evident research that goes back into perimenopause. Menopause, yes. Perimenopause, no. And the sad fact is, well, I don't really want to say sad fact, but like what's interesting is that I feel like that as women, we are doing our own due diligence, which is incredible. Like, I feel like that we're leaning in with one another. We're looking at this, like, I know personally, like, I'm looking at this from taking matters into my own hands. So in other words, it's like, what are the dietary needs that I can introduce to my day-to-day that I have to alter to otherwise help out and aid with these symptoms and the way my body's changing. And, like, for example, like, I have no filter on my face right now. Like today, I gave myself enough grace to get ready, no makeup, and that's okay because I was not feeling makeup, but I was very blessed to have a good hair day. I did. In fact, I did not. Did I? Well, actually, I'm like, did I? No, I didn't even put any product in my hair today. It's just water. Just like the water bottle. And I will say I did recently go to the barber. So shout out to my barber because this fade is like on point. I know. That was a bit of a squirrel moment. But the thing is that my body is going through all of these changes, and a lot of the things like I can't help, but there's other things that we just cannot help, and it's going to come no matter what. It's a bit of a roller coaster to say the least. Now, one of the things that I am very that I'm happy about is that I have started doing, again, a little bit more research and talking to others and reading up on, what is available, as far as explaining like perimenopause in itself. And it's just great. I mean, social media itself, I tell you what, it has been a lifesaver to be able to find content and to link up and talk with others that are going through this, because then it otherwise does make you feel that you're not alone, because these unexplained symptoms, because going back to the fact that like I just went to the doctor, we had this like full panel workup, we did blood work, we did all the things, right? They tested for everything possible that would be connected back to some of the strange unexplained symptoms that I've been having. And everything came back normal. Everything came back fine, other than my B vitamin levels were low, which I already knew. And then my D vitamin levels were low as well. But both of those, D was like, okay, I kind of get that. And then B, I already knew. But everything else came back fine. And so I was like, yep. I was like, that's pretty much about it. Yep. I know. I'm like, I know what's going on with me. And, but here's the thing is that one of the things that I know is that if you are going through a time where either you too have like a heavier cycle, or if you're in the midst of perimenopause or menopause symptoms, it's very important for us to find time to slow down. And that's going to look different for everybody. What slowing down actually looks like for me a lot of times is adjusting and making like small shifts in my day. So like, for example, I talked about this morning, my morning, sometimes going to be taking longer mornings. Like that's what I did today. I took a little bit more time. I woke up a little earlier than I usually do. And I was able to slow down and take it and kind of like ease into the day and then take more time for myself this morning. And again, it's going to look different for everybody. But I think the most important thing is to adjust your schedule to accommodate how your body is feeling. Because here's the thing is that even though we do put this immense of pressure, whether it's outliers or ourselves, are putting on this immense amount of pressure to just go, and we can do it all, and we've got this I am woman mentality and superwoman, and I can take it all on. I'm letting you know today, you do not have to take it all on. There are some things that I guarantee you can either wait till tomorrow, others can step in and do for you, or you have to say no to. I've talked a lot about in the past year about setting boundaries. And if you can at any time through your month set a boundary during prepping before your cycle and during your cycle, setting those boundaries, that, friend, is going to be the most important time for you to set a boundary, no matter if you are in perimenopause or you are in menopause. Because if you're not familiar with both, either of those, and you're younger, buckle up, because it is a ride. And it's not something that's quickly going to, like that. You can't skip over it. Unless you've had surgery, you can't skip over it. Like I know I actually had a conversation with my mom the other day, and she told me, she was like, I had a hysterectomy, so I don't have any experience when it comes to perimenopause. She was like, I don't even know. I can't even relate to that. And then she was like, your Mimi, her mom, she was like, I believe that my mom said a little bit about that she experienced perimenopause symptoms. And I'm like, well, I wish she was here and alive today, because that's the person I could have used a lot of wisdom from her about that. Because I promise you guys, when my grandmother was earthbound and she was here with us, and her physical body was here with us, it did not cross my mind to at any point ask her, gee, Mimi, so when you experienced perimenopause, what was that like? Because back then, y'all, I was young and naive. Things like that didn't even cross my mind. I thought it was like light years ahead of me before I would be in the realm of having to experience any of that. And here we are today. Y'all, if you know me, one of the things that I like to do is, no matter what we talk about on this podcast every week, I always want to try to take a scripture and relate it to whatever it is that I'm sharing with you and talking about. So one of the scriptures that I for sure want to dive in today and I want to share with you is Matthew. And I tell y'all what, over the last couple of months, I shouldn't be surprised, but over the last couple of months, I have been diving more and more into Matthew. I've been spending a lot of time in Matthew, and that's okay because there are a lot of scriptures in Matthew that I love. So today we're going to talk about specifically Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Now, I personally have the NIV version, but whatever version that you like to read, go ahead and either follow along or make a note of it and then look it up later on. But again, we're on Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. So mine says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Rest. I want you to hone in on that word, rest. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest." Again, there's that word again, find rest in your souls. "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." One of the things that I think that's really important for us to remember is that God gives us permission to slow down. God gives us enough grace for us to be able to take rest and know that it's important for us to do so. Think about the time in your life when, and you may be going through this right now, where you are just taking it all on. And maybe perhaps you either struggle with setting boundaries and saying no, or it could be perhaps that you're in a season of life where you have an abundance of energy and you're in a time where you're either like feeling super creative, because if you didn't already know this, that, on a side note, actually happens towards like the end of your cycle, I believe, where we like lean into like our creative side and we tune into that, and that's going to look different for everybody. But it could be that you all of a sudden have this like burst of energy, or if you're like myself and you have a neurospicy brain and you are leaning into your ADHD superpower and you are hyper fixated and you have this abundance of energy and you're just like, go, 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 and I'm doing all the things. Here's the thing. Take note of when, I would say, embrace 100% when you have that burst of energy, but also take a time out and take a step back and analyze, like, okay, am I getting burnt out? And what is your body telling you? Because I know that when I'm pushing myself, I typically get migraines. I start feeling a little bit more like lethargic, a little bit like weaker. My lower back definitely starts hurting. My neck sometimes will start hurting. Otherwise, like my ankles will swell or my feet will start hurting. It's just letting me know that, like, okay, you've been standing for too long or you're doing too much. Typically I forget to hydrate. So, that's a huge part of me feeling like lethargic and really tired and weak. But take account of how you're physically feeling. One of the things that I enjoy, well, enjoy is not really the right word, but one of the things that I do is on my calendar on my phone, I always want to have an idea. If you are still experiencing a cycle, one of the things I encourage you to do is to make sure that you are tracking it on some sort of calendar, because one of the things that I really truly helps me out now is that if I have an idea, a somewhat idea of like when my cycle is going to start, mentally I will start preparing. There are certain steps that I'll take probably about like a week before my cycle is going to start, so that I can start preparing otherwise for what's going to happen, because you know your body, right? I know that for myself, right in the middle of my cycle, as I'm experiencing it now, I have little to no energy. My brain is mush. Thank you, perimenopause. Not to mention the fact that like my iron levels are a little bit lower. I'm feeling very tired. My body just needs to repair and to rest. So there are certain things that I can do like a week prior, because I have that on my calendar. So I can do like a week prior prepping and getting ready for that. So what does that look like for me? That means that grocery wise, meal wise, I'm going to more than likely alternate that a little bit to accommodate my cycle, to accommodate me and my perimenopause symptoms. Thank you, ChatGPT. I love me some ChatGPT, y'all. Go to it. as soon as you get done listening to this, I highly recommend it's chatgpt.com, or there's an app as well. It's free to use, by the way. But what I love about it is over the last couple months, anytime, like a week prior to my cycle, and I'm planning meals for dinner specifically for my spouse and I'll go to it and I'll say, give me a week's worth of meals. I'm starting my period soon. I'm in perimenopause. Help me plan out meals for two for dinner that are going to basically aid with what I'm going through with my body. And it's like the coolest thing ever. So it suggests snacks, which I meal prepped my snacks. That was easy to do, like little trail mix, other things. So it'll suggest snack ideas, healthier dessert options. It'll include certain things into your dinner portions, your meals, where again, it's going to help you, like for myself personally, it's like to make sure that I'm getting like more iron, that I'm feeling my body as well. Aside from food, think about like what your typical week looks like. Look at your calendar, what's happening on your calendar during your week cycle. So, or however your cycle lasts for. What is happening during that time? Can there be things that you can rearrange and reschedule plans to where they're not going to fall in the time period when you have your cycle? Or perhaps if you're not your cycle, but if you're in the middle of like not in the middle, but if you're experiencing your perimenopause symptoms or menopause, if you're not having like such a great week, or you're just like, I'm a little bit of a slump, could there perhaps be things on your day-to-day plate that you can otherwise, again, like reschedule, maybe perhaps like take a rain check to, say no to. Again, setting boundaries, because it's all about making sure that we're not only nourishing our bodies physically, but mentally as well. So again, my mornings, talking a little bit about how slowing down looks like for me. So again, that means that middle of the week, typically there's going to be a day or two where my morning is going to be a little bit slower than most. It also means, again, like I said before, making sure that I'm shifting my schedule. It's okay to say no to certain things. I'm giving you permission to say no to certain things, because it's important, again, for us to take rest and refuel for our body, so that way we can be a better version of ourselves, and that we are taking care of ourselves, right? Because we, at the end of the day, we know ourselves more internally, aside from God, than anybody else, right? It could be, again, lightening your workload. I was just talking about that. For me personally, I skipped doing my makeup today. Now, I know for some y'all, me personally, I love doing full makeup, but I just don't have the time, or this week, because I'm having a heavier cycle, I just don't have the energy to do it. So there could be really small things that we can do for ourselves that are going to, as women, that are going to make us feel a little bit better and give us a little bit more pep on our step. So for me, that was a huge part, on a side note, that was a huge part of why not that I'm saying run to the hairstylist or the barber and just cut off all your hair, but for me, I needed a hairstyle that was going to be more functional, take less time, and because I'm experiencing these horrendous hot flashes, and I'm in Texas, y'all, so we're getting ready to be in the middle, we're just starting our summer weather, okay? So having nothing going on back here feels pretty damn great, I'll tell you what. But today, I had to make sure, because I don't know about y'all, but I love me some leggings. When it is my time of the month, y'all, as much as I want to get, I really tried really hard getting into my colored denim. I had these really cute burnt orange, rust colored jeans that I was going to wear today because I love a good pop of color. I tried really hard getting into those, and I was just too bloated to fit into them. I even did the whole, and I know if you're listening to this at one point or another, any of y'all could relate to this. I even tried the old lay on the bed, lay flat, take a deep breath in, pull the pants up, zipping it up. I tried that 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I am not doing this. So what did I do? I went out to where my laundry was hanging up. Yes, I hang our laundry up. And I grabbed my favorite pair of leggings, because I tell you what, if there is a time that I'm thriving, it's in my leggings during the midst of my cycle. And the thing is that I am super freaking comfortable. And I threw on some black sandals, because yes, it is still hot outside. But I threw on a real quick like cardigan and a tank. I didn't overthink it. But I knew that I feel like, for me, feeling like my best self as much as possible would be, I had a great hair day. So I'm like, again, going back to, I think it was like a week or two back, we talked about positive affirmations. So for me, it was like, I'm having a really great hair day. I feel like crap on the inside. I am so beyond tired because all my levels are low right now. And I could just crawl up in a blanket and just keep reading my book. But I wanted to show up to my therapy appointment. So what did I do? Like I said, I was so happy that I was having a good hair day. I found a cute pair of earrings. If there's anything that's going to turn my day around, I could be having a shit day, but if I'm putting on a cute pair of earrings, I'm actually okay. Things are looking up. And that's going to be different for everybody. So if that could be perhaps maybe pulling in to your favorite spot and getting your favorite iced coffee, or maybe a tea, or it could be fixing at home like a hot cup of tea for yourself. No matter what that looks like, take that one little thing for yourself. Give yourself some time. Give yourself some grace, because those little planted seeds along the way are going to help. Again, it's going to not only like help you heal yourself internally, but giving yourself love and grace and nurturing. Because here's the thing, is that I feel like that as much as our spouses love us, and as much as our kids love us, and as much as our friends love us, everybody is going to have an off day, right? Just like we have off days as women, everyone else is going to have an off day. And I feel like that as much as I could possibly even tell and explain to my husband how he could otherwise serve me during this time of my heavier cycle, y'all, that's exhausting. I'm going to be very honest with y'all. I don't want to take the time. I'm going to be honest. I do not want to take the time to tell him otherwise what I want, because I know what I need. I know what I want. And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be fair with y'all. I would much rather just do it for myself. Like fix my little snacky snacks. I want to be able to, again, like I threw on a cute pair of earrings. I put my little leggings on. I showed up to my therapy class or my therapy appointment. Whatever that looks like. I read my book. Like I'm giving myself like self-care, right? I'm showing up for myself, because here's the thing, is that I know right now, like for example, the other day, like my husband had a crazy long day at work. So I'm not going to put all this pressure on him and be like, man, you really got to show up for me. I'm having a heavy cycle week. I'm in the middle of perimenopause. I really need you to show up for me. No, I'm not. As much as I would love that from him, I know damn well that I can actually show up for myself even more. And I can give myself self-love and give myself grace and pour into myself, because I know more than anybody else. Like I said, aside from God number one, then there's us. Like we know, and God knows what we need, right? What we need the most. Can I get an amen? But again, also that could look like not only like slowing down, but canceling plans without guilt. I purposely slowed that down. I'm going to say it one more time for those of y'all that maybe didn't catch that part. Canceling plans without guilt. Here's the thing, again, it is okay to say no to plans. Because if you're not feeling 100%, if you're feeling off, if you're feeling tired, if you're having an it kind of day, you and you only know if it's right for you to show up to your plans. Now, granted, like yesterday, for example, for myself, yesterday was Monday, and I 100% wanted to stay home. I was wanting to stay in bed. I was wanting to take it easy, but every first Monday of the month, I meet up with some friends for lunch. And you know what? I knew that once I got to that destination, that I would feel better. And it would just kind of like reset my whole week. And it did. But granted, there are other times when I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, we are supposed to meet at for lunch today. And there are days when I'm like, you know what? I just don't really want to people today. And that's okay because I can cancel plans. The thing is that on the other side of that, the receiver, are they going to be happy with the fact that I canceled or I said that I couldn't show up or like, hey, I'm just not going to be able to make it today? Not always, because not everyone's going to receive that in a positive light. But we can't give power. We can't focus so much on how is the other person going to take that. How are they going to react? I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want them to feel let down. We have to selfishly in that moment take care of ourselves. Again, set that boundary. You don't really necessarily even owe them an explanation, but if it makes you feel better, and if you're that close with that person, they're going to understand. Message them and just tell them, like, I honestly could have been like, hey, I'm just in the middle of my cycle this month and I'm having a really hard time with my symptoms. I'm just going to stay home and just take care of myself a little bit. And the thing is that some people are going to get it and some people are not going to get it. But it is not your job, nor is it my job to make sure that we are making sure that everyone else is happy. They are grown people, y'all. It is up to them. It is their responsibility to make sure that they are happy. We have to, end of the day, we have to look out for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. Another thing is making sure that we're simply saying, not today. We're not saying not ever. It's not that we're saying, I don't ever want to have lunch plans with you again. It's me saying, I don't really feel like having plans today. That's fine. You know what that is? That's setting a boundary. It's important for us to give ourselves grace when we're not feeling 100%. It's important for us to not only speak to our inner critic and offer encouragement to ourselves. We have to speak to ourselves because, again, I feel like that there's a lot of self-deprecating. There's a lot of negative talk when it comes to wanting, or again, what's the thing? It just hit me. Feeling like feeling like we're being selfish, that it's not okay for us to slow down, to take a time out for ourselves, for us to hit pause, right? I've even talked about that recently, like hitting pause, leaning into the pause and taking time out for ourselves. I feel like that there's a lot of guilt that comes with that. There could be a lot of guilt that either somebody that we have company with, like whether it's a spouse, whether it's whether it's your children, whether it's somebody that maybe you're a caregiver for or a friend. I feel like that there could be somebody that possibly could otherwise make us feel guilty, or maybe we're taking that on for ourselves. But we have to think about the outcome, right? I know that because I took the day out today for myself and I took a little bit more time for myself this morning and I eased into my day, I know that I'm a better version of myself now because I did that for myself this morning. And I know that my future self, myself for tomorrow, is going to thank me in the long run for taking that time out for myself. And again, that's going to look different for everybody because our schedules are all different, right? But it is important, no matter what, to make adjustments where we can. I want to offer to you as well encouragement to talk to yourself. I'm talking to you now, right? I'm pouring into y'all now. I'm letting you know it is important for you to stop the negative talk. It's important for you to set that boundary right now. And I'm pouring into you and I'm letting you know that it's okay to give yourself grace. It's okay to slow down. Every season is going to look different for everybody. We are all going through different things at different times, and our days are going to be different for one another, right? Our weeks are going to look different for one another. I think it's important for us to also remember that Jesus didn't expect perfection. He does not expect us to be perfect people. He only wants us to be present with him. Jesus only asks us to be not only present with him, but to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we give we give ourselves enough grace to slow down, to enjoy the moments, for us to refuel our bodies, for us to make sure that we're not overdoing it and overworking ourselves. Because I feel like that a lot of times there's this mentality of like, go, 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 go. Like, how much can I pile on? How much can I do? I've been guilty about that in the past myself. I've shared with y'all before that there was for a long time, I felt that where I was satisfying not only my needs, but I was making God proud, was by keeping busy as a Martha. And I wasn't slowing down as a Mary, that I wasn't being present in the time. I was talking to my therapist today about that, about how I realize now that it's so important for me to not only be present, but for me to slow down. And I have come a long way. And I told her, I said, it's just so cool for me to think about like the peace that I have in my life now, where versus the disruption that was in my life. And it just seems like it was just yesterday, but it was like a whole different version of myself that didn't even know what the word peace meant. A couple ways that I personally like to do a little bit of not only like self-care, but to make sure that I'm refueling my faith, I'm refueling my mental state, my physical state. So a couple things for me, like whenever I'm either going through like my cycle through the month, or whenever I feel like that I'm just kind of feeling off, right? Like I talked about how I feel like it's one of the symptoms for myself with perimenopause is feeling like it's like an out of body experience. Like I don't feel like myself, I'm not feeling like super depressed, but I'm not exactly like feeling my chipper self. I'm just kind of like in limbo. One of the ways that I can pour into my cup and help myself like feel a little bit more like lifted and a little bit more, bring a little bit more peace and light into my life, is I love listening to worship music. In fact, I have on Spotify, I love having like my personalized playlist of my favorite worship songs. If not, I personally love listening to KSBJ. So they actually have not only, they have a free app that you can download, but I know that you can listen to it online as well on your computer. But I love listening to KSBJ radio or Engine Radio. They're actually a sister radio station that's adjacent to KSBJ. But whatever you listen to that's going to be like have a positive message or uplifting, or maybe perhaps like your favorite songs, create a playlist for that as well. But music always, I feel like fuels me in a way that I don't really feel like, I feel like with music and reflection on whether it's like scripture or like positive quotes, like those things I feel like are the biggest thing for me to like fill my cup up and for me to like feel a little bit more like myself. Also, whenever I'm going through like a heavy cycle month, I make sure and get a nap in. And what I know that sometimes like I'll struggle with honestly like physically getting myself into the bed during the middle of the day to take a nap. But now that I've gotten older, like I really love taking naps. Now that's going to look a little bit different for me depending upon how my week looks. But like, for example, I took a little bit of time this morning reading my book, and I noticed that as I was reading, I actually was drifting off asleep. So that like little cat nap that I took really actually helped give me a little bit more of a boost of energy. To know me is to know that I love fragrance. So one of the things that I could for sure, hands down suggest to you is find something that's like in your favorite fragrance and make sure that you have it around you. In fact, one of my favorite things that I love to do is I have like a little like room spray. And anytime I come into my office, I love spritzing it like around myself. I love having like my warmers and my wax bars, and depending upon like if it's like in my bedroom or if it's in the living room, there's certain fragrances that I find that like cheer me up, that are my favorite smells. And I absolutely love to have them on hand, especially when I'm going through a time where I'm feeling like I'm either in a little bit of a funk or perhaps I'm in the middle of my cycle. Something that's going to, again, like boost my mood and put me into like a little bit of a healthier mindset. Low-key movement. So again, I highly suggest that if you're going through a week where, again, you know that your cycle is about to start, or it could be that you're like myself and you're experiencing perimenopause, menopause symptoms, if you first wake up in the morning, do like kind of like a self check. I love checking in with my body and my mind first thing in the morning, because I tell you what, like our day to day is so different from one another, right? Especially as women, I feel like that my day that I had yesterday, for example, I had a thriving day. I was very productive. I had a lot of energy, and today is like so black and white from that. And so for me, what's important is to know from like the day to day that today, for example, I knew was going to be a low key, low impact day. So that means that I'm still going to be productive, but I'm not going to be out and about as much. I'm going to do a little bit more slowing down. I'm spending more time here in my house, in my office, adjusting my schedule again to make sure that I'm helping myself out, as much as I can. Now, it's important for us to keep in mind that, when it comes to maybe adding that nap in, when it comes to, playing our favorite playlist, worship, listening to worship music, maybe perhaps diving into doing like a prayer journal or journaling in general. Or I know the last couple of nights I've actually printed out free coloring pages. I love Canva, so I went to Canva and printed out some coloring pages, and I had some crayons because I do a lot of vendor events where kids are there. So I started coloring a little bit. Commercials drive me crazy whenever I'm watching like one of my favorite shows. So if there's commercials that are coming on, instead of me getting into the habit of grabbing my phone, which I usually do, I actually instead grabbed the coloring page and the crayons, and I colored until my show came back on, and then I put it down so that way I could be present for my show, because I wanted to make sure I not miss anything, because it was one of my favorite shows. But doing little things like that, making small adjustments here and there, through our months to accommodate, to make sure that we are, again, giving ourselves enough grace, filling our cup up, and taking care of ourselves, mentally and physically. But thank y'all so much for hanging out with me this week. I am actually extremely proud of myself. I'm not even going to lie. Like, I'm very proud of myself for doing this podcast, because coming home from therapy, I really wanted to do a little bit more of self-care myself and show myself grace and get my butt in the recliner and relax. However, I feel like it was important for me to not only be consistent and show up for you guys this week with the podcast, but also share a little bit more insight in, what struggles are happening with me this week and where I'm at, and hopefully you can relate to that. And if you have any tips as far as perimenopause is concerned, or heavier cycles, by all means feel free to leave them in the comments. Whether you're catching this on anywhere where you're streaming your podcast, or if you're watching me live, the video feed from YouTube, make sure and not only give me a thumbs up, but make sure and subscribe to make sure that you're not missing any of the new segments to come throughout the weeks. But thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. Leave me a review. That's the best way, honestly, hands down, that you can show support, is leaving me a review and just letting me know, what you thought about this podcast. If this is something that you feel like somebody else could hear, feel free to share it with them. And I hope y'all have an incredible week, and thanks for hanging out with me. And until next time, don't forget to unscramble your faith and find clarity in the chaos.